It's just a unique conversation.
He really likes her. And you can tell that there's an age range there.
Well, I'm going to go for it. All right, guys. I call this meeting to order. This meeting of USD 49 Board of Education for October 26, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. We have quite a bit on our plate, so let me get right to it. I'll call for an approval of the agenda. Our agenda is posted on board docs, a link for which is on the USD 49 website. I move to accept the agenda as written.
Second.
Do I have a second? I have a second. Any discussion about the agenda itself? Okay. I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor of the agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay. Motion passes 6-0. Please vote electronically the same way. Next item on the agenda is our consent agenda. The consent agenda includes board meeting minutes from October 12th, 2020, special board meeting minutes for October 19th, 2020, the Hayes Recreation Commission agenda for October 28th, and minutes from September 23rd, personnel transactions, Sites Council minutes, the ECC Director's October report, and a few other items, and financials. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
President Walker,
Yes.
I'd like to have some discussion about the site council minutes.
Okay.
Can we pull those out, please?
Yep, let's move those down to,
Thank you.
Then I move to approve the consent agenda with the absence of the site council minutes.
sure, we'll move those down. Somewhere down below, but I haven't figured out where to. Okay, so we have the
Second.
motion and a second. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Craig. Any discussion beyond what we've already discussed? I want to welcome some people to the district, or back to the district, depending on the case. Jacqueline, Lillian, Terry, Kiefer, Allie, Lexi, and Blazy. Welcome to USD 49. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay, motion passes 6-0. Please vote electronically the same way. Let's talk about the site council minutes after. Let's do it right now. So we moved 2.4 is now, I guess, 2.9 or 3.0. Did you have anything specific you want to say, Alan, about the site council minutes?
Well, I was just wondering, there's not all the schools that are involved with that. Is that?
Yeah, it's just very simply, that's the schools that, gave the site council minutes. I'm sure you'll be seeing them as they go out throughout the year. Not everyone has site councils at the same time, so.
Okay.
All building administrators know that they're asked to submit the minutes, and so you'll be seeing them throughout the year.
That'd be great. What is the expectation as far as meetings?
The expectation, I think, and it probably varies. Honestly, it varies probably from. I think, honestly, I don't want to say that they meet every month because I don't believe they do, but I think they meet periodically, at least once a quarter. So.
We did get a site council report from Roosevelt. Have we had a report on that from last year? A site council report from Roosevelt from last year?
From last year?
Yeah.
I have
one
no.
that was deleted or was not. I just wonder if it just hasn't been completed or.
I don't know. It's the first I've heard of it.
I don't know.
That wasn't.
I'm not sure what you mean. They
Yeah, I
didn't
don't really
present,
understand.
or they did, and we wanted some more information.
We had them all
Written.
written out except for that one.
Oh,
I think that was a switch over of the
Well,
administrator.
Yeah, I guess.
Never
I
got
suppose so. Yeah.
I know we had schools come and present live.
Sure.
Last year. I wonder if Roosevelt was one of those. Do you recall?
Well, that was 2 years ago. Last year we didn't have them come live.
Yeah, they
something
did present. They did present last year at the work study session.
2019.
Every school did.
Oh, you mean from their, that wasn't their site council, that was just their,
Yeah.
so I was looking at some of the
I was.
reports, and I was involved in some of those from the previous year. When they came to a board meeting and they had a nice presentation. Is that something that you're looking at this year?
Well, I think that's, Mike and I visited about it, and I think that's what the work study sessions will be. They highlight their buildings, some of the things that are going on during the work study session.
And so will they be throughout the year, starting pretty soon, or after
Well,
the second
they
year?
already started because we met with the Learning Center and ECC last month during work study session. And you got a report on the activities that are in the building and school. So I believe next work study session is a Laughlin.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions about the site council minutes? All right, let's move
So,
on to recognition.
Do we need to approve those since they're not in the
We should
consent
have just left
agenda?
them in there because they were just minutes, so.
Oh, that's what I was, I
Yeah.
didn't think we did. Okay.
All right, as long as we all understand what's going on. It was minutes, we discussed them, and we're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, technically, they didn't need to be pulled out.
Yeah, I
It's just a
guess
discussion.
Yeah, okay, we're good. As long as everybody understands that we're approving the site council minutes presented today. All right, I'm going to move on to recognitions, item number 3. We have 3 folks being recognized today. Donna Hudson Hamilton with the Early Childhood Connections will be presenting the following awards. I'll stop and have you announce them.
Okay, thank
I
you.
got them, but
Actually, these awards were to be given to these individuals last April at a conference, and that, of course, didn't happen.
okay.
So I appreciate you letting me have the time to give them their recognition here. I just feel like they've kind of not received the recognition that they deserve. Our first award was for Tamara Engler. She is a family advocate. She's our family advocate that's located in the over at Russell, and she chose not to drive over tonight. And so we're going to be doing something just special in-house for her.
Okay.
And then our second award winner is Sammy Vanek, and she won the Kansas Head Start Association Teacher of the Year Award. So I'm going to call up Sharon Cooper and Sammy, and Sharon's going to talk a little bit about her, and we'll present her with her award.
All right.
When it comes to every child having a quality experience every day, Sammy Vanek rocks it. You walk into her classroom, you'll see that their classroom is laid out with purpose. Every part of her classroom has a purpose. Ask her and she'll tell you exactly what type of learning takes place there. And the classroom is laid out intentionally, so transitions happen as least often as can be helped, and it's as smooth as possible. Transitions will lose learning time, so she went to great extent to make sure that transitions are quick and flow smoothly in her classroom. Probably the hardest thing to try to describe to you is how you feel when you walk into her classroom. Whether you're an adult or a child, right away you're going to feel wanted, welcomed, accepted, and you're going to find yourself, I kind of would like to hang out here for a while. That comes largely because Sammy innately forms great relationships with all of her students, regardless of their needs. She meets them where they're at. But on top of that, she forms relationships between the students. So they help each other, they support each other. She's created a school family where everybody wants to be there. One of the things that is unique wonderful about her classroom is even in the busiest parts of the day, when every preschooler is actively engaged in a variety of learning activities, her room is still calm. There's a buzz, there's a hum, but it's calm. And I think it's because she's done such a great job teaching the children the parts of the day, what comes next, how do those routines flow, how do I get through this part of the day, what are my behavior expectations. The brain is pattern seeking, and she works hard to put those patterns in place for the kids. She has, one more thing I'm going to talk about, She has the ability to see her whole classroom and keep her whole classroom moving forward, as well as every single child in the classroom, providing the accommodations, the additions, whatever that every child needs to be successful. She works hard to make sure every child has the tools they need to experience success and to begin that level of learning in school. So when it comes to every child, every day, a quality experience, you can see it right here.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah. Well, Sammy, I can't wait to actually, when we can get back to seeing the schools, I'd love to have the board come by, or maybe just one of us come by and see your class and see how it works. But
We're always looking.
kind of have to put that on hold for a while.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Every child, every day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Okay. And then we had one more award, which we were very excited about. We had nominated the Hayes Medical Center for the Khsa Excellence in Community Service Award. And so Mr. Beach is here to accept the award. And I'm just going to share a little bit about what we wrote for them. Our program collaborates frequently with Hayes Medical Center to facilitate all the health requirements necessary for our students in the program. We collaborate with physical exams, immunization, lab work, breastfeeding support. There are in-house clinics and outreach clinics, including the Hayes Med First Care Clinic allows our families to establish a medical home. Hayes Med has also provided the necessary funds for us to do health literacy training and provide health literacy kits to all of our connection families. The Hayes medical staff has always been a constant presence on our health service advisory and other committees. They've always been willing to come and help support us. They're also instrumental in telling the story of our work. They often refer families to us. They allow us to distribute program literature. I can't say how excited and thrilled we were for their tremendous financial support of our program. When they donated the $500,000 towards the renovation of our early childhood complex, that was just huge in completing our facility. And I just can't say how much we appreciate that and all the work they've done with us.
All right. All right, thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thanks, Donna. And Sammy and Eddie, thank you too for coming tonight and letting us thank you. All right, next item is the public hearing. So we have a public hearing on the closure of the Washington School, and then afterwards we'll talk about a resolution. But Ron, do you want to start off and give us a little rundown of?
Sure, I'm just going to give you a little bit of history, a little bit of timeline. In January of 2019, the USD 489 Board of Ed entered into a real estate contract with the Overland Property Group, development for the sale of the building, which was for $500,000. Overland Property Group planned to file for tax credits and take possession of the building once the tax credits were approved. When the building was sold, it was currently being utilized as the district's early childhood connections facilities, but plans at that time had already been made to move to ECC out to a newly renovated facility on East 13th at the start of the 2019-20 school year in August, which would leave the facility unoccupied with students. The district was notified in July of 2019 that Overland Property Group had not received tax credits, but was interested in entering into an addendum to their purchase contract that extended their contract until June of 2020, while OPG, Overland Property Group, worked to get new tax credits. The Board of Ed approved at that time the addendum to the contract in July of 2019. The Learning Center was temporarily moved to that building, 305 Main Street location, in September of 2019 due to flooding issues in the classroom at Rockwell Administration Center, where it still currently resides today. In June 2020, the district was notified that Overland Property Group had received tax credits And we're planning to go ahead with the closing of the contract, which was mutually agreed upon would be December of 2020. Arrangements were made to temporarily move the Learning Center to the Hadley Center in December of 2020, while decisions are being made on a permanent location for the Learning Center. At the time of the closing, the district will receive $500,000 and will use those funds to pay down its lease purchase responsibility for the purchase and renovation of the early childhood complex facility on East 13th. This action will reduce the district's lease purchase obligations by 3 years and will save the district $229,000 in interest on the lease purchase principal. The action being asked of the Board of Ed tonight is to approve the resolution of closing the school building pursuant to statute KSA 72-1431.
All right, thanks, Ron. Okay, let's go ahead and have the public hearing portion of the meeting. So if anybody in the room would like to come forward and speak to us, I have some guidelines, but I'll read those if I need to. Okay, you guys aren't here to talk about the, okay, thank you. All right, I guess we can have our own discussion now. So, okay, I'm going to end the public hearing portion, and I'm going to go ahead and move with the resolution so we can get the ball rolling.
Can't we have discussion before we?
Need to make a motion first before you do that?
Yeah, let me make a motion, and then we can have discussion and make it part of the... So I'm going to move that the board approves the resolution as presented to complete the sale of the Washington building to OPG Land Development. So,
Now, just to close the school building.
oh, that's right, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Let me
this
back
isn't
up.
about the sale.
This is just a motion to close the
Yeah,
school
this is to
building.
close the school building.
Yep, thank you for clarifying that. Let me restate my motion then. I move that the board approve the recommendation to close Washington School. Okay, do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
All right, thank you, Michelle. Okay, now, let's have some discussion.
Ron, I was paying attention, but I didn't catch one of your dates. Originally, what was the date that you started out that the previous board accepted the $500,000 contract?
January of 2019.
January of 2019?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that information should be on your,
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah, on that.
right.
Yeah.
I would like to, since I know there is somebody in the audience that would like to maybe hear this, I think it's important to share that there's still, at least as far as I would be concerned with, is that we, as a district, still have an emphasis and a commitment to the learning center that was housed there. That just, even though it's no longer going to be located in that building, there is no, I mean, that's still a vital part and service to our community.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That program is very vital to what we do with kids and allowing them to have opportunities to get their high school diplomas.
Okay.
So, yes, absolutely.
I mean, I know that wasn't, but I wanted to make that, I just saw your email, sorry. But,
Oh, yeah, I don't think there's any desire at all to interfere with the
No.
Learning Center's productivity. That's a fantastic program.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, this Learning Center is currently residing there, but that really has nothing to do.
yeah, the two
Yeah,
different
yeah.
discussions, okay.
So were we moving them not back to the original place because of health concerns?
Well, right now, it's pretty much gutted, so it's not ready for them to, and I think I shared with the board, I don't know what meeting, that we are
Is there any
currently
other-
looking.
Is there
at
any
the-
other health concerns that we haven't been apprised on the, down here?
Absolutely not.
You haven't had any other issues that, because of construction?
Yeah, it's gutted right now. we plan to, at some point, probably put it back together, we just haven't done anything yet.
And that, we're moving to, how much square foot are we going into?
At the Hadley Center, I couldn't tell you. I mean, it's similar to this almost the exact same size that they have.
Has anybody seen that place yet, or has anybody, and on the board, when's the last time you've been to Washington School?
We're talking about West Side or Learning Center?
No, the Learning Center at Washington School.
Well, I was there, I don't remember, one of the graduations a while back.
Yeah, we did a
Last year,
graduation
must have
last
been
spring there. Yeah.
And I don't understand, I've done some more research on it, on why that we didn't get an appraisal of it. I know it's just not common practice, so we didn't get appraisal of that, plus we didn't get the appraisal of Oak Park, and that concerns me a little bit, that practice of buying or selling property without getting to know the exact value. Why that property was appraised at 1.3 million and we're just getting 500,000. And then in your statement that that's going to, we haven't met about the board to talk about where that 500,000 goes. That might be a good option, but that's something that the board should discuss and talk about. The biggest reason is that I was part of that transition of those kids going into that whole school transition into 4 buildings and what that has done to our school. And one of the things that we're supposed to show is has it improved our district. And K-5 is the most neglected group. It's our largest group, and it's the most neglected group in the last 5 years because we've made that choice to load those other buildings up, but we have not done one thing. We've increased some of this, we've got some kindergarten teachers, but we got more funding for that. But that is a concern. We also are missing funding because kind of a hindsight that was a high density school, which would have been giving us a lot more funding than what we have now. Now we have our highest high density school is Lincoln School with about 40%. Is that right, Ron?
Yes.
And then Hayes Middle School is our next one. And then all the other schools are below 20%. So the opportunities that those kids used to have, they don't have anymore. Those kids used to be part of a student council. They had their spelling champion. They had famous figures. And then they were pushed into the larger schools and not have those opportunities now. So those at-risk kids, because that building was 94%, very high density, don't have those opportunities anymore. And we've seen that before when we closed Kennedy. We had multiple sports, and that went to one, and we said as a district, I know this was at Ron Wilson's, but as a district, we said, well, we're going to have all these different sports things, and it went for 1 year, and then it was just fizzled out. We don't have those opportunities anymore for those kids. So I just think that we need to be very sure when we go into these situations. The other thing is, I went back and looked at the minutes, and there was no offer for any other groups to, and I even watched the meeting, for any other groups to participate. It was all going to be Overland Poverty Group. It was not anything local. So we are, again, shopping out of town without giving opportunities. Now, we did get a proposal from Turnkey Properties that day of the meeting for $200,000, which was just kind of a last-ditch effort, just throw it out just in case something happened, I think. But the commitment was already done in that December of 2018. There was a commitment to Overland, and that was brought back to the January meeting, which I attended, and was giving them that opportunity without giving other people. Now, Bill, am I correct that, or is this correct, that in May of 19, they backed out of the contract? because they didn't get their tax credits. I think Mr. Wilson mentioned that,
They didn't back out of the contract.
2019.
of 2019.
They didn't back out of the contract.
Right. And then if they didn't get the tax credits this year, they could have backed out too. Is that right?
Yes.
In any case, did we have a clause in there that we could back out? If we deemed it's
If we had
necessary?
another offer that was made on there, we could take the other offer, yes.
We had an option to solicit other offers if they came in higher.
Higher than their offer.
Correct.
That was, you're talking about July to September 2019, not the one in May. The May was just, they could back out, correct?
Yes.
But we didn't have anything except for that 2-month period, correct? That we said we were going to list the property, but we didn't list it, we just had it available for people to,
Well, the board could have refused to sign the amendment, and then the contract would have expired without getting closed. So to answer your question, yeah, the board could have refused to sign that addendum, and essentially we're backing out of the contract.
and that was the October, in October or September, when that time frame ended.
Yeah, it was the end of September.
That would have been the end of September.
That was when, or, so it wasn't, that's when it was signed?
No, it was signed in July.
It was signed in July.
Yeah.
The addendum was signed in July, but it could have been what? It was already signed, how could you back out of it in September, somebody else, just as somebody
Well,
had
I
an
mean,
offer?
once September, I believe the addendum read that once September 30th hit, you couldn't, the district couldn't enter into another contract if someone came with a higher bid.
Right. Okay.
May I ask a question, Mr. President?
Sure.
This particular vote that we're discussing right now, we're talking about specifically just closing the school, right?
Yes,
And
that
we're
is correct.
closing the school because we already have a location for the only thing that's in the school, which is the TLC. It is in a contract to go to Hadley. So for this point, I feel like we should really get to voting on this, because the next thing is what the discussion might be about. Again, just trying to put this along. To
Okay.
move the school, like, again, requesting to call for a vote.
What?
Are you saying that I can't talk anymore, or is that
No,
what?
that this discussion isn't about the actual current motion, it's the next.
It's about, well, yeah, it's about the whole process and how it went down and how it is not, where this hearing is for on how this has improved our school. I have not heard how it's improved our schools. I've heard that it was a group from out of town that came into Hayes and offered $500,000, and it was taken without even looking at the value. So I think it should be known that this is how these things worked out. It doesn't sound like, I don't know if that's going to be an option for us on the next thing. I just don't understand that these are things that we continue to do without thinking what it does to kids and families, because it was devastating. I sat across the table explaining that to these families that were pulled away from their school and had to go to a place they never knew about.
And I didn't mean to make it seem like I did not care about disparity in K-5. By no means am I suggesting by my comment that I do not care about the disparity in K-5. I have kids in K-5, so I clear it there. I just, in order, is my
I
thought
understand.
process
Sure.
on it.
Gotcha. Thank you, Michelle.
I had several patrons reach out over this resolution tonight. One kind of the theme going was we reduced a K-5 building, and we have another K-5 building that's 90 years old at this time, and they are really concerned about our facilities, especially for our elementary kids.
Right.
And I know of previous boards have had the opportunity when they sell property, whether it was the 33rd project, different things, to try to move that money to make a strategic plan of 5 years. I think we need to look down the road because our facilities in 5 years, we're going to be having almost a 100-year-old elementary school that's here in the district right now. And we closed a K-5 building, and it's my understanding this board has its hands tied because it was the board in January of 2019 that made the decision to sell it. And the only way we can back out of it is to break a contract and possibly go to court. So this board has very little control of this whole situation. But where the patrons that I talked to said, please think about the K-5 facilities around this district. Do we need to be looking at buying land for another elementary school with that $500,000? Make a strategic plan down the road. Don't just pay off interest. Make a plan to replace a school. Make a bigger school than Lincoln that could handle the kids that were at Washington, the kids that are at Lincoln now. Just don't jump right now with that $500,000. Make a plan. So I'm not here to say, is it going to improve the district? This is one way we could say, this resolution, we are improving the district by closing Washington Elementary, by making a strategic plan of looking at land to to build a new elementary school. Because if it's not this board, it'll be the next board, because not very many districts have 100-year-old buildings.
Right.
We can't just not look at our facilities, and we've got the opportunity to do that. So I would agree that our district is making an improvement to the education if we're looking at using the money for closing this school to build a new one. So that was my take from patrons, and I want to thank the people that emailed me about that.
Very good, very good. Any other comments, folks?
As I had the opportunity to walk through the building again and look at it and notice that several of the cabinets and the things have been ripped off the wall and moved somewhere else. Then I looked at the contract, and the contract reads that a lot of those things are supposed to be left in place. So I don't even know if they're going to come back upon us to have concern with that because it says something about things attached to the wall should be there.
I don't believe so. Overland Property Group's been on the building several times doing lots of work, and I've had lots of communication with Galen. Yes, right. Galen has not shared any concerns that Overland Property Group has expressed.
Well, at least Overland Property Group has recognized that that is a very viable building to invest $4 million. And to notice that that is a prime piece of real estate off of Main Street for $500,000. They have specifically made some good choices. I had a question. Have you had any contact with any of their attorneys or anything? Do you know of their attorneys? Okay. Because I noticed that they said that they work with local attorneys to acquire land, and I just didn't know who that was. Galen, do you know?
I've never heard them say they work with local attorneys.
It was on their website.
I've done 4 projects now with them, and every one of them's been through me. And they do as much as they can with local people. There are some things they can't deal with local people because of economies of scale and because they have contracts that these people deal with 6 states. So they have contracts with people. So they try to do as much as they can, especially with subcontractors. But their general contractors are not interested. They have some attorneys in town who just reference, but they've never hired one to my knowledge.
Okay.
There's no need for them to hire an attorney. I mean, it's a simple real estate transaction.
what are some of the other fees? You explained some of those to me. I don't know if the other board knows that. You know, we get some more. Is it okay if we recognize Galen?
Sure.
Homey?
Go ahead. Yep.
Can I take this down?
Yeah.
Yes.
When you say fees, what do you mean by fees?
After the fact, where you mentioned about that they will be paying the district for certain things like for utilities, and there's something
I mean,
specific.
expenditures they've had to date?
No, sir. After the fact, that you were telling me about, there's a certain amount of money that's going to be coming back to the districts besides, because we had that first $5,000, that was like earnest money.
Yes.
And do you know when that was distributed, or?
I don't.
June, right after they received the tax credits.
Yeah, and every month they've been making a payment,
Yes.
which has been deposited in a trust company or a title company in escrow for school board. That money is held there and it applies to the purchase price, but if they back out, whatever the balance is at the end, that all goes to the school district.
That's if they back out, but if they don't, then it still does, or?
If they back out on their end, it's forfeited to the school district.
Okay, so that's not funds that will come to this district.
Yes, it is.
It is, or will?
Part of the 500,000.
It either gets applied to the purchase price, and then if they back out, the deal's gone, so you get that money.
It's addition to the 500,000. Is there any other,
Part
it's
of
not?
the-
No,
Part
it's
of
not
the-
in the
It's
bill.
part of the 500,000.
Credit toward the 500,000.
Okay.
It's an earnest money.
And is there any other fees or that goes to, that's going to drop that down for or we will get at least 500,000? That's the maximum we'll get, or will be less than that?
Are you talking about expenditures from the transaction?
Yes.
Such as title insurance and things like that?
Is that
Those are-
seller or buyer?
Those are split, I believe. Bill?
I'll refer to Bill on that.
I think He's got the contract. in
He's
there.
our lawyer, so we'll let him decide.
But my understanding is everything's split, 50/50. They have, at this point, expended probably almost, they're approaching $500,000 in addition to the purchase price. Architect, engineering, contractor fees, historical preservation fees, applications. Since this process has started, I've been up at the county and the city multiple times. We've got a zoning variance for flood. We've got another change of zoning, because the property is changing from a school district to a multi-family use, party-use facility. Lot split, replatting, things like that. We're going through that process right now, and those all include fees, architects, engineers, and.
So their plan is to maybe sell off?
They don't know what they're gonna do yet. They have not asked me to market the back or any of the property.
But they've they've done the amount to pay for doing that.
They've got another $500,000 expended in addition to what they'll be paying.
Part of that's replotting.
Right, before they even get a hold of the property, they're gonna be spending nearly $1 million. If somebody wanted to buy the additional land behind it, you're looking at a 4.5 to maybe even 5 foot raise in elevation, because that's in a flood area. That
Just
gives
like
us-
they did across the street.
Like they did where the former varsity
Varsity.
bar was, yes. And it's actually, it's south of there, so it's probably a little bit lower yet. It's going to be more elevation.
Okay.
Similar to what they did at Fort Hayes for the west of there is the Fort Hayes, the big complex.
I'm assuming I was not involved with Fort Hayes, so I don't know what their conditions were there.
Oh, you mean by the football field?
Yeah, the athletic training,
I don't know. It seems like it's lower than the top of the
other than in it.
canal. So if it does flood, it's I don't know, just,
I didn't mention this, but
Maybe.
it's going to save the district also with our utility costs and just the property and casualty insurance, which is very high down there because it is in the floodplain. It'll be over $40,000 every year the district will save. not having to pay for that, so.
I was going to say, I know that it looks like things are moving quickly, but, I mean, we discussed last meeting that it was repurposed back in 2015, I believe. So we pulled students out of there for a reason, I presume. And I think what I remember hearing was that we could not use the upper floor anymore because the repairs to get it up to code or up to standard or something would be so much that the board at the time, before my time, decided that it was time to repurpose the building. And then now we move forward into it's 2020, and it's been a little bumpy road, but back to Craig's point, there has been some planning. The money, when we started talking about the sale of the building,
When was
we
it?
were also talking about the ECC building and thinking, okay, if we could sell the Washington building, that would give us the money to put into the ECC building, maybe after the fact, but it'll pay off some of those bills. And that was sort of the plan. Now, it's probably not as long-term plan as you were asking about, but we also remember, we've also been through 2 bonds that failed. First bond was designed to repair every single building, including Washington. That failed. The next bond came up, and it was to not fix every building because we thought that we should target the newer, even though they're pretty old still, the newer buildings. And so that bond didn't pass either. So I don't know if it's that surprising that we're getting $500,000. That's a good lot of money for a building when I don't know, a little went off track there, but basically I think that we've actually tried to get bonds passed, to fix our buildings up, and people don't want to pay pass those bonds. Okay, the district's done a very good job of, we had the ECC building we were able to purchase with some help from KU Med, and I believe this money can go to help pay for some of that, so.
Yeah.
I might point out, like you mentioned, or I think Craig, you mentioned that you had people wanting long-term plan for another site. I might point out, I think it was 10 years ago or longer, my father sold 41.5 acres on the east side of Hayes High, and I've seen a schematic of how that was, and it was included a junior high and a grade school there.
Right.
And you still have that ground, so you've actually bought the ground, possibly, if that's the location.
Yeah, we actually discussed that too, didn't we?
And Craig, just so that was actually talked about as far as in some of the other stuff there. The big discern there with the community was a lot of them did not want a grade school out next to the high school.
Right.
But yes, but that definitely was
Yeah.
discussed though about possibly adding an additional grade school or something.
Because we talked about if you increase with the size of Hayes High projection, and then
Right.
if you put another elementary, and at one time they were even talking about another middle school out there, you were going to have several thousand kids within that radius, and that's not where all of our kids are, the new additions are
Yeah.
building right now.
Well, we had a study that was done, and if I remember right, they said the best location for a new elementary school was north of Hall Street, or west of Hall Street, and north of 27th Street. Do you have that study, Mr. Wilson?
I possibly could, I'm not aware of that study.
I know Mr. Thiston talked about it. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember some of that information. I don't.
So we have some of that research
Oh, yeah.
and study. And, you know, I've been on board 10 months, and we have really not had a serious discussion about facilities, and that's something that I think.
Well, that's a good point, and I'm glad you brought that up, because at the beginning of the year, if you recall, I think I mentioned that this is the year we need to really decide what to do about a bond. And then COVID hit, and I think most of us decided that, it's probably not the best time to go out and ask to pass a bond during this time. So now that we're here, and hopefully the next couple months, okay, maybe we start talking about bonds again in January. A year later than I wanted to, but, so you're right, we need to have those discussions again.
I don't want to ever come off saying that, because I think the Head Start Early Connections is the key to good education, that getting those kindergartners ready to go. But like I said, the patrons that contacted me are really concerned about our K-5 buildings. And want us to see if we were showing that it was going to improve, show us how we're going to improve the K-5 buildings. So,
Well, that's a good point. I agree with that. But if I recall, and again, there must have been a reason that the building was repurposed. And yes, from 2015 to now, maybe the district could have put enough money into Washington, to get that upper floor repaired, but there was a reason we repurposed it. I think it must have been, we can't use it for as many students as we even have in there right now. We're going to have to put those kids somewhere
When
else.
I was in the district,
Okay.
we couldn't have little kids up on the second floor because it doesn't have an elevator, it's not ADA accessible.
Okay.
They used it for offices and storage up on the second floor. So we could only use half of that building for kids.
I got you.
Once, because 3- and 4-year-olds have really strict regulations
First level.
about
Oh,
windows,
sure.
exits, and different things like that.
It's actually all the way to
Okay.
second grade, so it can't be on the second floor.
Okay. Well, the resolution on the floor right now
So,
is
did you
to
have a resolution
approve
for
the-
the closer Washington School
Yale.
back in 2015? Lance?
I hate to,
That
I
was
just
a-
I
had
don't
one
remember.
question. You'd mentioned the county or the city, did they give a variance for the flood plain for them?
We set the hearing.
Okay, I saw that on Hayes Post.
I don't think anything's been approved
And I
yet, has
even
it?
emailed because it didn't have anything to do with the district. It was just the buyer wanting a variance so they wouldn't have to go by the flood.
Because they are going for the historical tax credits, which gives them an out on
Right.
going to that. It's not the 4.5 feet or whatever they have to raise it. There's a lot of other things you have to do on mitigating flood. And this allows them to minimize the cost on that a little bit. When you're dealing with a project of this size, every little bit helps.
So is that a deal breaker if they do not get that variance?
From my understanding, no. I've spoken with commissioners. I have not spoken with all of them. City staff wholeheartedly recommended it to the Board of Zoning Appeals. We also have a lot split, which we've gone through. We're still got a zoning change to change it from school use to multifamily use, or to high-density living quarters. That has to go through. We didn't really anticipate any problems with this. The city of Hayes and the developer have had an unbelievably good relationship over the years. This is their 4th project, and they get along great.
Because it's a win-win for the city, because there's a lot more tax money that will be coming through that addition than they're getting right now.
You're
Yes.
spot on. And I mean, if you just go look at their facilities they have already, look at how well they are maintained. I watched multifamily units come into town, and in 8 years, 10 years, the siding's coming off, the roof's off, the paint needs to be done. The apartments are atrocious. People take care of them very well, because the way this project works, they have to be in that project for at least 30 years.
Yeah.
And it behooves them to take care of it, so they do.
And they've hired local people to take care of it, which is
Actually,
good.
Ellen, when we spoke, you said you spoke with their property manager, and she's a gal from Waukene, and she works for them, and they're
She's been
very-
there since they started.
Yeah, and everybody seems to enjoy working with her. You said she's got a great personality and great relationship with you
Yep.
when you were principal. The tenants down there love her, the owners love her. She's contracted out of a company out of Wichita, but she's from Waukene and lives right here.
I think I know who that is. All right.
Thank
Who
you.
are the owners?
Overland Property Group is comprised of 4 gentlemen from Salina, all went to school there, graduated together. Matt Gillum, Pat Beatty, and I haven't dealt with the other 2 very much, so they're not on the top of my head. They don't all live in Salina at this time. They use the architect firm out of Salina called Gillum and Associates, which is Matt's brother and father. Pat still lives there. The other 2 owners live in the Kansas City market. Part of the reason they live there is simply because of logistics, because they, like I said, they operate in 5 states. They're traveling and they're expanding. They're probably, at the rate they're going to be going, they're going to be one of the largest multifamily, low-income housing owners in the entire Midwest.
Now, are they construction The ones in Kansas City?
No, they contract out construction. Their banking comes out of Kid Together Community just north of Salina. They've used Sunflower Bank locally for stuff. They keep as much as they can in Kansas, as
When
much
they
local as they can.
built those across the street, it was a Kansas City contractor that
The
came
general
in.
contractor, yes. I think it was Key Associates.
Is that gonna, have they got their contractor yet? I mean, is it gonna be
They
out
haven't,
of
They haven't.
district?
I didn't catch your name. What was your name again?
My name is Galen Rowan.
Galen. Okay. Thank you, Galen. I
Thank
think
you,
we're good.
Galen.
Thank you very much for
Thanks,
the
Galen.
information.
Appreciate it.
Very-
Thank you.
Very valuable. Well, folks, I think we have discussed this. I don't know if we need to keep going over some of the same issues. I'm going to move on with unless somebody really objects, I don't think we're going to unsell the building and put kids back in it. I think we need to close the building. So I'm going to go ahead and call for a vote on the motion to close the Washington building. It's been motioned and seconded, so let's move forward. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed to the motion?
Nay?
Okay, motion passes. Anybody abstaining? Okay. Motion passes 6-1. Please vote electronically the same way. Again, Galen, thank you.
Thanks, Galen.
All right, motion passes. Now, public comment portion of the meeting. I don't think anybody's in the,
Do we need to
Room
do
here?
the resolution now, or?
well, we did, didn't we?
No.
No.
Oh. The one thing I need to sign, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you approved. the
Actually,
resolution.
we approved it.
That's what you voted on.
I thought that was
Resolution
just
was
the,
to close the school.
Okay, that was the resolution?
That's
Okay,
the resolution. That's what the resolution says.
Okay, the resolution's not correct the way it is, because that says that the January date, and that's not the latest date. The latest contract is July, so somehow that needs to be corrected.
The July contract is the addendum to the
Yeah.
January 2018.
1, 2, 3, 4, 4 notches, 5 notches down.
There's no mention of the other addendums. Do I see?
Alan, I guess I want to understand exactly what it is you're trying to accomplish here. I mean, what is it that you know that's obviously slipped past our legal counsel, our administration, our buildings and grounds, and everybody else? Because every meeting we talk about this, you continue to go through and make insinuations that it wasn't handled correctly, even though we have a legal counsel here that stated it has been. I guess the best way I've seen to address this type of stuff is to bring this stuff up and discuss it and go through there so we can talk about what's going on. But instead, we have this constant barrage of questioning, acting like nobody knew what they were doing when this was happening. And just, what is it you're trying to accomplish?
I just want us to do it right.
What
I
is
want
it
us
that
to
we didn't do
follow the
right?
law.
Please ask what we didn't do right, because our legal counsel here is stating we've done everything correctly. So since obviously you have a law degree, please explain to
No,
Bill what it is
sir,
we
I
didn't do
don't.
right.
And I'm not
Mr.
gonna-
President,
Yes.
this discussion's not leading us to where we need to be. We have to admit that the sale of the building was a previous board. Our hands are tied. We are just closing the building. We aren't selling it. The 6 board members that aren't here sold it. And so, like I said, there's a lot of questions, and everybody's got a right to express themselves positively in the direction of the sale. But again, we're just making a statute decision.
Yes.
The past board has to live with their decision.
Okay. So,
And I would like just to help defend that, is to make sure that we follow, because according to this, like that first line, it says, of the statute, a school building means a building or structure operated or maintained by the Board of Education and the Unified School District. So if you go back in history, that would mean that we didn't do it right for Munger, we didn't do it right for Shively Field, and we didn't do it right in 2015 when Washington was closed the first time. We should have had a resolution. I don't know of any resolution for all those other properties. And the state statute is clear. And like I said, the last previous
well,
meeting.
I think we need to move on. the
Yeah.
building wasn't closed in 2015. It was repurposed, as you clarified earlier. We're closing the building now. Is that, I think that's correct. And we voted already to close it.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to move on to the next issue. Okay, next issue is public comment, and I don't see anybody in the room except us, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to item number 6, which is the reports. So the first report we have is from Khsa. He's going to provide a financial report to us.
Thank you. Just want to talk a little bit about where we sit in terms of our COVID funds. The running joke has been, as bills come up this year, well, we'll pay that with our COVID money. And the joke is we spent it probably 6 times over, but we haven't. I wanted to spend a little bit of time going through and just give you an update on where we are.
Sure.
So in your board docs, there's just a quick little one-pager. The top part of that is actually our revenue side. So through the Ellis County Spark money, so the COVID money that went to the county, we applied for reimbursement on a reimbursement basis. We applied for and received $179,000, just over $179,000. So that's some COVID money that came in. Through the CARES Act, we also had money that came directly to the school. So there's 2 different kinds. There's ESSER and then ESSER SPED. So you can see the ESSER was $363,000. The ESSER SPED portion was SPED, short for special education, almost $55,000 there. The other COVID money that I'm going to lump in there is we asked for, received some money from Aetna, our health insurance provider, to help offset some of the costs as we were looking at doing some of the reopening. So actually the $12,000 that we received is a reimbursement basis for the thermometers that we put in teachers' hands.
Oh, wow.
So on the revenue side, there's a couple of things that come off there. The first one is the ESSER SPED. So it's much like other federal special ed aid. It comes to the district, but it flows right through the district and then goes to the co-op. Okay. So that $54,000 benefits students within our district, but it goes through us directly to the co-op and provides services for kids with disabilities within the district. So that $54,600 comes off. Within the CARES money, the ESSER money that comes directly to us, there is a private school proportionate share. And so that's based on kids in poverty, number of kids in poverty, so we calculate that based off of free and reduced lunch. So there's a proportionate share. That money is still ours, we spend it, but we have to use it for things that benefit the private school students. In this case, as we were buying some of the equipment, the private school asked us to buy a couple of different things. So some of the, like the sanitizing units, the Clorox 360s and the Victory, the handheld, some of the Torsano, some of those things. So with the private school proportionate share, we actually buy those things, we inventory them, they're still ours, we place them there, and then at the end of this grant period, or at the end of life, then they come back off of our inventory. So,
Okay.
So there's a portion of that money goes there. When we look at the expenses that we've incurred, COVID-related expenses, some of the things that stand out, we added staffing and added some supplementals. So we added a nurse position to be able to free up some time, and then supplemental, as we talked about before, for our head nurse, Jessica Rowe, to do the contact tracing and work with the county within our schools. The cleaning equipment, things that we talked about, as well as a lot of the supplies, the wipes and the hand cleaner and all of those things, batteries for the thermometers, all of that stuff has gone through there, as well as for the elementary parent choice remote students, the Edgenuity program that we added. If you remember, we have the Edgenuity for the Learning Center, and then we added the elementary side of that also.
Okay.
So we look at those kind of fixed costs, and we're at about 365 there. Some of the year-to-date things that are a little more squishy costs, a little harder to define. We've got additional sub in lieu of plan and teach in lieu of plan for the staff members at the middle school and the high school that are taking care of the parent choice remote, so the kids that are working remotely. We've got teachers that we're paying basically extra duty to do those throughout the day. And then we also have some long-term subs in place for these positions, where the teachers are doing the parent choice remote. Those costs will continue on through the year, although not necessarily one-for-one, so it's not going to be, $14,500 a month necessarily, but there will be additional costs as we go. So you can see the COVID money is officially spent as we look at projecting out through the year. There's other costs, I'm sure, that where we've increased some things, even just some overtime here and there. So there's some other little costs that are going in it. But for the most part, we're able to pay for a lot of the direct COVID costs or expenses based on some of those additional revenues that we've got. Any overages would come out of things like our contingency reserve and other places as we get closer to the end of the year. Keep an eye on that as we go. Questions or?
Yeah, well, it looks like to me, if I'm interpreting your table right, we have about $138,000 left that we haven't spent yet. So we still have that money to,
About 125, 130.
Okay.
It's sitting there yet.
Yeah.
And when you look at that 44 that we spent through October,
right,
that'll be a continuing recurring cost.
Yes.
There's probably another 110, 120 there.
Okay.
There'll be some more supplies as we restock. We were trying to estimate what,
yeah,
we don't want to overbuy on things like the hand wipes or and so we were estimating we'll have some restocking. We don't have enough to get through the year. So we won't have any problem spending up the CARES money.
yeah, I don't think we will.
Yeah. We don't have to worry about.
And do you, just on a regular basis, keep your eye out for other grants and other funding that can help with these? I know you do, but
Yeah.
I'm just stating that you do, and so
Yeah, and
maybe we get
also,
lucky and come across some more funding somewhere.
and there has been talk at the federal level of another stimulus package that.
Oh, yes, right. Yes.
And that includes, in initial talks, and you never know exactly how it'll all land, but
Right.
there has been initial talks about more federal dollars coming to schools for COVID expenses. So we'll just see. We're not planning on that, I mean, at this point,
No,
but there
I
is
mean,
a
I think we've
possibility out
commented
there.
before how appreciative we are of Donna and other folks that go after grant money, which is very helpful for us, so yeah, it's good. Okay, very good.
Chris, have you reached out to more local people who have some of the products that we're using instead of purchasing them out of district so much? There are a lot of local cleaning places that sell the same products. Are we buying them local, or we continuously go to Wichita to buy them?
Yeah, for the things that were purchased initially, most of those were through Pure Zone. That's who we've used in the past for most of our single source things. I know there's been conversations about looking at other places as we move forward too. But things that were purchased here, most of the cleaning and sanitization were purchased through our typical vendor.
Who's that? I'm sorry.
Pure Zone.
Right.
Yeah.
But is that something we can look at doing more locally?
Yeah, there's been lots of conversation about that. Yeah.
Good.
Some things, we do buy as much as we can locally. There's some things that, because of volume purchasing and because of some of the history that we've got, that you find the vendor that can fulfill, and a lot of the stuff was purchased in high demand time, and so we had to go with who we had and who we could get it, and who we trust as far as what products work and some of the training and things like that. So the relationship we've had with Pure Zone historically has been very beneficial, I think, for the district. But we are talking about looking other places as well. We're not like locked in there. But I will say just the amount of training that I've seen through Pure Zone as they come and they walk the buildings with our staff and do independent audits of not only cleaning on a regular basis, but then also with COVID, some of the audits that they've done on sanitization and things like that, and then training with everybody from the nursing crew on how to mix and utilize some of the cleaners, to all the trainings that go on with the custodial staff. Also, there is value in that. So that would be part of, as we look at other vendors, local vendors, we have to make sure that we wouldn't be giving away things that are helping us move forward too.
Right.
I understand that, but I know there's some vendors that have the exact same products. And the history you're talking about is only 5 years long, and then we've had vendors that we've used for decades that we're not using anymore. And I just think if they have a footprint in Hayes, we should really work hard, especially this remainder amount that we have, a little bit we have left, we should really try to spend it locally.
I know we did look at the Victory handheld sprayers that I showed you last meeting, the little handhelds. There was a little bit of a holdup. And so we did look locally but it was, they were just not able, I believe that the reason was it was just, they were pushed out in terms of being able to get us those handhelds.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing
Yeah.
that. Yeah, and we continue, I appreciate you bringing up the local element, and also appreciate the fact that there's other decisions that make it a more complicated just decision.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Any more questions for Chris on that issue?
Okay.
Go ahead. No.
I just had a quick one. Can you give us an update, or you may need to bring it back to us? I don't want to catch you on anything. How is the state tax, what I'm reading, the tax that the state has been getting has been staying up there, so we should not be looking at major cuts for at least the rest of this school year? What's your prediction?
Yeah, knock on wood when you say that, but yes.
Were we 70 million over for last month?
So revenues have held in through the last one, and I'm gonna let Kyle jump in here too.
Okay.
Very up on it. But, so the revenue did come in above the projections, which had been the lower projections.
Right.
So that's a good sign. It's still concerning because I think it was still below what they were needing to fund the state. Is that a fair way to say it?
Yeah, the most concerning part about the budget is the way that that the governor had to balance the budget was not only because of those lower projections. We are above those, which is a good sign. But a big part of that balancing was basically moving a payment from, I don't remember the exact dates, but basically 2 days before the end of the fiscal year to 2 days after, essentially. And you can only do that so much before it catches up with you. And so I haven't seen any further analysis to say, what does that mean for potential cuts? I think a lot of it will depend on House and Senate races that are taking place next week. So, because the projections are that a lot of moderates are going to be coming off of, particularly the Senate, making it a more conservative Senate, which will be we have a governor who is very much does not want to cut education, but if there's a more conservative Senate, those risks of having a veto-proof majority in the Senate could put education at risk.
But we're not to the point, over the past, when we got to this time of year, or December or January, as a district, we said we better make cutbacks just in case there are cuts later in the year.
Yeah, and I think you have to remember that the Gannon lawsuit.
Right.
We're still in year 3 of the Gannon lawsuit, which basically assures school districts, I think we're looking at $100 per student raise for next year. So if whatever the legislative, session looks like in terms of who is on elected or not elected, it still comes back to that lawsuit. It was ruled on by the Supreme Court that they had to fund our schools at a certain level. So there'd be a lot of talk that it's not as easy as just saying we're not going to fund, because there's a lot of other things that have to go into that. So I guess I'm not a person that the sky is falling. We're going to move forward and not make reductions or planned reductions because of things that might happen, because we do have to fund our kids.
Very good. I want to point out too that Yeah, Chris, you'll be presenting more information to us as the year goes on, but the idea is to sort of have a theme to it. So this theme was COVID, next month or whatever theme you have, so. But we'll still probably pepper you with a few questions, but I think this way we need to make sure we don't expect you to have all the answers for everything every day.
Very good. No, very good. It's such a valid question.
It is a great, no, it's great. I appreciate Craig for asking.
After the election, people get a truer understanding of what the theme is going to be in Topeka this year and what direction they think they're going to go. And by then, we'll have another revenue estimate or another revenue update on the state revenue. But overall, yeah, holding above the lowered expectations, but kicking that can down the road. We need the revenue to continue to come in where they're at.
Yes.
So yeah, you're right, President. The theme this time was kind of giving an update on where we're at with some of our code funds. I did want to give an update from the HR side of the house also, though.
Yeah, sure.
And it's definitely, I think, COVID related as well. Unemployment claims in the state have been really overwhelming the system, I think. And unfortunately, bad people have seen that as an opportunity. We've had, I think, 26 different staff members that have had their personal information used. Now, that it didn't get leaked from the school. No, I don't know where they're getting it from. Some past leaks or they're guessing people's phone number. I don't know, but they're getting enough information that they're filing unemployment claims. And this has been a statewide thing, but we've had 26 different staff members that we've received unemployment claims on. We know they're fraudulent because they're current active employees. Right. So when, by working through our unemployment group, the group that handles the unemployment side for us, right. When they notify us that it's an active member, we reach out to the employee and we get them with all the resources to get with the Department of Labor and fight the claim or protest the claim and report the fraud and everything else. But it's worth noting for the community as a whole that this is out there and it's happening over and over. We've had some people that are now in their second round of unemployment claim being filed in their name. And so.
And really the only way for them to know is if an HR person tells them, I think. I mean, somebody could be doing this to me, but if my HR department doesn't come and say, hey, this happened, how would you know?
You wouldn't. Yeah, you wouldn't. And that's the frustrating part about it is there's really nothing the employees, there's nothing our staff can do to avoid it. And there's nothing that we can do to not make it happen. They're not getting the information from us. The only way to know that it's going on is when we get the unemployment filing, and then obviously we can track it down. So yeah, the only way as an employee you would know is if your HR contacts you and says, hey, you're still working.
We something similar came across our emails from Fort Hays. So it's statewide problem, maybe even nationwide. I'm not sure. I guess Department of Labor has some folks that are targeting set aside for this issue. Okay. Wow. Crazy.
Yeah, it's too bad.
Okay, any more questions for Chris before we move on to Kyle?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chris, thank you very much. All right, Kyle?
All right.
Please.
Just wanted to give a little bit of an update on special education. I've kind of been visiting all of the different, the last board meeting I wasn't here. I was actually in Ellis and Victoria, making the rounds around Ellis County, talking about the same stuff I'm going to talk with you guys about today. Just kind of that first page on the handout, just kind of an outline of the different employees that we have here in the district. Got 39 special education teachers that work within USD 49 boundaries. 3 of those are early childhood, 3 of those are gifted, and then the rest are all at our elementary and middle and high school. In addition to those teachers, we also have 110 paras that work within the boundaries. On the next page, when I get to that, you're going to see that the number of paras, or it'll say classified FTE. Our paras aren't a full FTE because they only work about 29 hours a week. So that gets them to 0.87 FTE. So when we get the numbers don't exactly match up, but this is the actual number of human beings that we employ. And then school psychologists that work within USD 49 in some capacity, there's 7 of them. We have another one who works just for Victoria on a part-time basis. And then we have 9 speech language pathologists that support our students. And then that right column is all the different itinerant services, those that go throughout all the different buildings and all the different districts that we serve, hearing impaired, visually impaired, autism intervention, assistive technology, all of those there. And then we have special programs such as SPARK, which is our gifted program, our low incidence program, or our life skills program that is from K through 12. We have Westside Alternative School next door. We also have a classroom at KBC. Not everybody knows that, but we provide the, education to the students that find themselves at KBC. The New Teacher Academy is something that we've done for the last 3 years to help our new teachers get up to speed, to be able to help our students. And then we oversee certain parts of the infant toddler Part C program, mostly through the funding side of it. The actual operations is overseen by Khsa Children's Center, but we do have some relationship with that as well. Total number of students that we serve with exceptionalities, with disabilities, and those that are gifted is 905 as of last week when I printed this, and we're at 715 of those students are USD 49 students. Any particular questions about the services we provide or the staffing?
Well, real quick, we have 715 in USD 49,
Correct.
but we have another couple hundred, basically, rounding off,
Exactly.
that are in the
Another
co-op.
100 Yeah, 190 in the co-op as a whole. So.
Now, does that also include some of the pass-through money, I guess, that we help fund the private schools here?
Yes, and that 715 includes the students that are at Holy Family and TMP,
okay.
because
That's
they're
what they
technically they're 49 in our catchment area, so I count those in the 49.
So this is another example of, we were talking earlier about Chris was talking about some of the money that goes to private schools, sort of a pass-through for us. But without USD 49 helping do the administration for those pass-throughs, it'd be much more difficult for these private schools, I think.
Absolutely, and we actually have employees that work, like the teachers and the paras that work in special education at Holy Family and TMP are USD 49 employees. They just that's.
Yeah, I think the rationale when that
so.
was set up was it makes so much more sense to have the teacher go there or the counselor go there instead of having the kids go somewhere else. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, right, and in the co-op.
But again, I don't know how many people know that we actually have USD 49 people at the private schools for a reason to help those kids.
Absolutely, and we do it. Anytime we're dealing with private school and special education, there's always that balance of which makes more sense. Over in Ellis at St. Mary, they have so few kids that we serve out of that building that it makes more sense for them to travel to Washington Elementary or Washington Grade School there in Ellis to receive those services. Whereas here, the numbers are large enough, it makes sense to have our own staff in those buildings. And they work well with us to allow our staff space and time to work with the kids.
Very good.
Moving on to the next section
Kyle?
is just, oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Do you have a breakdown of the students, of that 715 and where they're at? And is your secondary, are you including your middle school as secondary?
Yeah, middle and high school is
Middle and high
secondary.
school, okay. So if you could send that later, that'd be fine.
Yeah, I can break down and actually, we'll have official numbers at the beginning of December 1, we have December 1 count. Can I wait until then to
Perfect.
get those exact numbers? And
Sure.
It'll show the breakdown of what disability or what eligibility category, how many we have in each category by
Okay.
building. So we can get that for you, but.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Do you try to work with those students within the classroom itself? Do you try to work with those students within the classroom itself, like in an inclusion type of a situation?
Yes, the IEP teams are always looking for the least restrictive environment for students, so serving them as close to their general ed student or their general ed classroom as possible. The IEP team determines where those students will be served, but we're always looking for different ways. And when we get to the last page, I'll be talking about my administrative focus. One of those focuses is on fostering independence, and a big part of that is getting kids the skills so they can be successful in those gen ed classrooms and in those settings. So,
Good.
So absolutely. Next page, after talking about kind of the services and stuff we provide, going into the breakdown of staffing and the categorical aid that we get from the state for this. Special ed funding is provided through three main sources: federal, which comes through block grants; local, which comes through our district assessments; but then the state funds come to us through what they call categorical aid. And instead of getting paid for by students like general ed does, we get paid for, or we get funded by our staffing. And so for every licensed staff member we have that is working a full 1,116 hours, that's 1 FTE. So for every 1 FTE of a certified staff member, we get, well, it'll shift a little bit throughout the year. We're estimated to get $29,500 for each one of those FTE. For non-certified staff members, so our paraeducators, anybody who's not licensed, we get funded at 40% of an FTE. And like I said, our paras aren't actually at a full 1 FTE. Most of them aren't. So we end up getting funded at 0.4. When they add up to a full FTE, we end up getting funded at that 0.4, which is about 12,000-ish, give or take $1. So,
Okay.
but then that all adds up to that total categorical aid, and the pool of money that gets divided by all of the different staff in the state. That pool of money is basically staying the same, or at least when it's growing, it's incremental. It's so little that the amount of staff that gets added across the state is greater than the amount that's going up. So the amount that we get per unit is less. So last year we got $30,010 per FTE. This year we're expected to have $29,500. And so they say that, you know, they are putting more money towards special education, but it ends up being less per unit of what we're trying to provide for students. So just to give you guys kind of that update of that. Actual numbers right now, from a staff FTE point of view, we are up slightly on certified, but that was because we had an OT position that was a 0.8. In order to make that a competitive position for somebody moving from out of state, we made that a full-time full FTE, and so that contributes to the shift there. We do have a little bit of buffer for our para to be able to add some paras if we need them. Right. Then of course balancing that throughout the year to make sure that we don't burn through all of that at the very beginning. So,
Okay.
any particular questions about staffing, categorical aid, how all that fits together?
State's still not funding special ed at 100%.
Correct. And
What is the percentage now?
About 72%, right?
yeah, 72% of excess costs. So
So-
the way,
That's 68.
or it's,
Yeah, it
oh no,
was.
it is 68. It was 72 the year before that. That's what it was. So federal law says that they would fund special education at 40% of what it costs above educating a non-disabled child. They fund it at actually about 13 or 15%, something like that. And then by state law, we're supposed to fund it at 92%, but we're only at 68% as of last year. And so that's one of the big advocacy pushes for the Kansas Association of Special Education Administrators, is trying to advocate for appropriate funding at both the federal and the state level.
So depending on who, after the election, we really need to work on our local representative.
Yeah,
Correct.
really.
And help them understand how it impacts it, because when special education, the services that we provide to students with disabilities, we have to provide those services. So that we have to fund those services, whether it's through the state money or local money. And so when the state doesn't fund special education appropriately, that just means, it doesn't mean we're doing less for students. It means that we're having to fund it through other sources, and that does impact what we're able to do and the flexibility sometimes of other programs.
Right, yeah.
So yes, advocacy is huge at all levels. Chris, the next page, Chris talked about the ESSER SPED funds there. I've got a chart there showing how much we've got across the co-op, kind of our intentions of using that. We can't use it for things like salary replacement, so we can even reimburse ourselves going back to last year when we paid, for one example, when we paid paras when they weren't actually working, we were paying them. we could go back and reimburse ourselves for that. We are looking at ways that we can use that money to impact students that are particularly in remote or quarantine settings, looking at things like devices for paras. In our outlying districts, those districts provide the paras in their buildings with devices. Khsa doesn't do that, and so we're looking at ways that we can give those classrooms an opportunity, because our paras are finding themselves supporting kids in remote settings more. That's difficult to do with devices that we have. So we're trying to figure out how we can support that. We're also looking at things like e-curriculum, of course the supplies and equipment, everything from safety equipment to electronic equipment that will support that online learning environment. So that's kind of what we're looking at there. I'm currently in conversations with principals and teachers of identifying what would have the biggest impact. Biggest thing, wanted to get through about a quarter before we took a big swing at this, because I wanted to see what we really needed as opposed to what we thought we needed. Because there's a lot of supplies that we bought at the beginning of the school year that they were great in theory, and then once we got a couple weeks in, we're like, oh, we didn't really need these, or it's not as critical that we have this. And so I wanted to try and avoid that if we could. Also, we're trying to get some more clarity about the funds, how we can use those funds and stuff. So,
Sure,
so
that makes
it's been
sense.
good. Okay, and then the last thing, the last page is on the co-op programming focuses. Of course, this year is big on e-curriculums like iExcel, Reading A to Z, News to You, those kinds of things that we can use with students, whether they're remote or in person. We're using FastBridge assessments series as a way to create a common progress monitoring tool across the co-op, so that a student isn't dependent and a teacher isn't dependent on, if a kid moves from Ellis to Hayes, we still have the common tool that can be used to track that progress a little bit better. We're still doing our mentoring and ambassadors and our Weekend Academy to help get our new staff up to speed. That's been a really valuable tool in communicating with them. We have had to adjust Weekend Academy, the new teacher academy, particularly this year. Usually we would meet on an early release day, the morning of early release. Well, this year subs are pretty limited and can be on a pretty demanding. So instead of 9 or 10 subs being pulled to do that, we've taken the stuff we've been doing with 49 Flex, and we've turned New Teacher Academy into Flex opportunities with some administrative check-ins throughout the month, and then we do a group check-in in an afternoon at the end of the month, just a way to make sure we still have eyes on the new staff, we still have an opportunity to talk about the things that are difficult for them, but we're getting them the information they need when they need it. So that's been really important. And then the last programming focus is on those contingency plans. Last time I was here, I talked about those briefly, basically making sure that our students have, or our parents and teachers and the students have a plan for when a kid shifts from in-person learning to remote or hybrid, that we already know what we're going to do with that student and how we're going to provide that service. That's been invaluable as kids have shifted back and forth. So that's kind of our programming. And then me, from an administrative focus, my first one is fiscal health, making sure that we're keeping things healthy and where we can keep doing the things we're trying to do. Last thing we want to do is to get into a position where we're having to make any cuts or do anything like that where it would risk what we're trying to do. Talked already about the fostering of independence, trying to make sure that we're getting kids and not just our kids, but also our paras and our new staff up to speed and able to do things independently, faster, and more effectively. This year, the stress on our staff is definitely higher, and so another administrative focus is on supporting staff and figuring out how to make sure that reading their needs and trying to get them the support they need when they need it. One thing in particular that I've done is I do a weekly Zoom office hours, basically, so at the end of Friday, not everybody takes advantage of it, and I don't expect everybody to, but they know that if they need to be able to reach out and figure out, hey, I've got a question about this or whatever, they've got an opportunity for that two-way communication to make sure that, if they have something that they need, we can help them get it figured out. And then the last thing is on parent communication and making sure that parents feel, in this time of uncertainty, making sure that parents feel that they're a part of the team and feel like they are truly understanding what's going on with special education. So,
Fantastic.
all right, that's everything that I have. Any particular questions or?
Kyle, with the COVID and all the stress going on, has this put additional stress on special ed if a kid is chosen to be remote or being quarantined? Are you doing extra to meet their IEPs on those?
It completely depends on the kid, and that's why those contingency plans are so important. Really, those plans have been important because the IEP team and the people who know that kid best are dictating what that looks like, as opposed to me having to say, kid goes remote, we're doing 40% of whatever, or we're doing 120%. Like, that doesn't help if I'm the one making those calls. Those IEP teams, the adults that are working with that kid, that's been really critical. It has created additional stress, particularly in small pockets, and we've been encouraging staff to work with the parents to make sure that if we're seeing where a kid's not making progress to their IEP goals, that what are we going to do to address that? What changes to the IEP might we need? What other services might need to be added to that IEP to support that? So yes, there's definitely been higher stress at different points, but I feel like our teams have done a really good job of working with parents to try and alleviate that or work against that. So.
Great.
Good. Any other questions?
Any questions, comments, folks?
Thank you very much.
Kyle, I really appreciate the information you're providing. I know I said this when Chris came on board in your position, that it was so nice to be able to hear information, and you guys do a great job of making sense of it all. Because I know what you do, both of you now, and it's a very complex job. They're very complex jobs, and you're dealing with some complex issues. So it's nice to be able to hear from both of you, and I understand what you're saying.
Excellent.
That's right. Okay, next up, Ron, do you have some information for us?
District communications. Since our last regular meeting, we have celebrated our school custodians and school bus drivers with appreciation days. And just wanted to give an official salute to our custodians, our grounds and maintenance, and our bus drivers for all their efforts in providing a valuable learning opportunity for every student every day. Day in and day out, these folks are just really helpful delivering our mission. We as our district are incredibly lucky to have these folks as part of our USD 489 team. So we just definitely wanted to give a shout out to all those people. I also got some great news. I think this is, we need good news in these times. If you remember, the board purchased iPads way back last spring. We received those iPads before the school year started. However, we did not get cases for iPads, which really give us some safety and security for the life of those iPads. So good news is iPad cases have arrived. This week we are working on collecting the old iPads and wiping them and getting them prepared to surplus them for resale very soon. And our goal will be to have new iPads into our elementary students' hands by next Monday. So I thought that was good news to share. It's been, COVID definitely put a damper on the iPad case making apparently. So also this week, parent conferences will finish up. This was kind of a new experiment and experience with virtual parent conferences being held. But from the feedback that I have received, I've heard very positive feedback. Although virtual conferences have proved a valuable option during COVID, our hope will be to return to face-to-face options very soon. Okay. Let's hope so. I think, Alan, you had asked about class size, elementary class size, some numbers. I have some of those numbers for you. The average class size this year for our school year is right now, the average elementary classroom is 19.
Okay.
The average middle school classroom is 22. And the average high school classroom is 24 and a half. So you can see the variance in numbers there. Our elementary range Our smallest elementary classroom is 13. Our largest elementary classroom is 21. Secondary range goes from as small as 15 up to 31 in some of our larger classes. Also wanted to share our PCR numbers. I believe if you remember, we started out over 200 at the beginning of the year. Right now we're down to 129 PCR students from the beginning. I think a lot of those, as the year has gone on, we've had parents make decisions about bringing them back on site for various reasons, but we still continue to understand the importance of PCR and to make it as valuable learning experience as we can. Sure. Right now we have, in our elementary, we have 75 PCR parent choice remote students. At the middle school we have 32 parent choice remote students, and at the high school we have 22. So wanted to report that. The Roosevelt HVAC project. Structural engineer is still waiting on verification for the roof structure to ensure that the roof has the proper support to support the roof mounted equipment that comes with the HVAC equipment, especially the cooling tower over the boiler room. Dwayne Vaughn is actually going to be here. He's our mechanical engineer that we've hired. He's going to be here tomorrow. I'll be meeting with him and Rusty as we go over the finalized part of the layout of the ductwork, location of the units, and the piping of the remainder of the building. Once we meet with Dwayne, I will try to get some information out to you once I have that. So
Sure.
that's
Great.
where we're at right now.
Are we still on schedule to be
Still
able
on
to do it
schedule.
next summer?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. Still on schedule. So, should not be an issue. I think also there was a request, Alan, you had mentioned last about looking at expanding our transportation services for more bus riders in the district. I thought I'd just share some of the numbers. Right now, we currently only transport students who reside more than 2.5 miles from their attendance center or any special ed student who requires transportation. Right now, we transport approximately about 700 students daily, in addition to some special ed students. By expanding, of course, not all students in our district would ride the bus. Sure. But you're probably looking at expanding upwards of 1,000 students if you open that to, less than 2.5. Chris has visited with Russ. I have visited with Russ about this, request. At a minimum, we would be looking at probably 4 more buses, 4 more drivers, of course, and possibly some more bus monitors. Approximate cost for that would be somewhere in the $500,000 to $700,000 range. Each bus is about $100,000 with cameras, and then when you start adding in salaries, anywhere from $500,000 to $7,000. On top of that, you would probably have you're going to have more fuel costs, you're going to have more insurance costs, and more repair costs because you have a bigger fleet. In visiting with Russ, he has been in the situation where you did transport all students at one point. Some of his concerns were just that as we have moved to this, just the discipline issues have decreased dramatically as we have decreased the number of kids on the bus. And he said that's, when we looked at minimum, that's 4, that's what they had. He said realistically you probably need 6 more buses just to because he said we were mostly 3 to a seat in that situation, which required really some discipline issues. Yeah. He's also concerned about some staffing issues for bus drivers, current drivers that probably may not continue if you loaded their buses up. He also maybe has some slight concerns about the transfer issues with more buses and more students in the transfer area. And just, I think, as you look at these kind of requests, you have to also anticipate that you would need more money pulled into capital outlay for the transportation budget, based upon what they are spending now and anticipated costs. So just wanted to share that information with you and give some feedback.
That's good. I'd like to explore these different options. Is there, you mentioned an extra 1,000 students, we think.
Yeah, that's just a stat.
I wonder if do we have any, and that's, I guess there's two ways to think about this. Well, we could do the math and figure, well, there must be another 1,000 students. We could also look back to the days when we did not have that limit and see how many kids. Or do we need to ask parents if they will put their kids on the bus if they had a choice? Because I don't know. I don't know if we can guarantee that we're going to get not automatically 1,000 more kids.
No, and that was just how I arrived at that is we're roughly transporting about 700. We have 3,000 in the district.
You're saying going to 1,000, not an additional 1,000 on top of that. You're not saying 1,700 kids on the bus.
No, well, yes, approximately. I mean, you're talking. I mean, I don't know.
I was just asking just to clarify.
I wasn't criticizing what you're saying.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that we need to probably investigate this some more.
I mean, I just kind of roughed it in the middle.
Oh,
okay.
makes sense. No,
I got you.
We have a little over 3,000 students.
Okay.
We transported more than half.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
So yeah, there was no. I didn't calculate anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
The way we used to,
Okay.
the way that it was available was if we had a bus and we drove by a house and we had an empty seat and someone requested, they had to request. We didn't do everybody. It was if they requested it. So you go into a community and you go in a bus and the people like in the back of the trailer park they are 2.5 miles, but the people in front, so you're driving by all these kids and you have a bus that's empty going in and coming out with like a fourth of the kids. So,
Yeah.
and I was watching the buses today, and there's buses that are pulling up and they're not full. So not necessarily do everybody, but just say if they request, and then see where we're at. Do it case by case.
Yeah, actually, I didn't state it very well, but that's what I was sort of thinking, that we can't assume every parent will do this, but there may be some. So maybe we need to ask
the problem
parents.
is it's once you say yes,
Yep.
everyone I mean, it's becomes the bus gets full.
And one of the big reasons for that being done a number of years ago was because we were in such a crunch for money.
Sure.
That was the reason why a lot of those routes were cut, and it was a massive savings in order to go through rather than having to cut other areas for education. That was one of the areas that we cut.
Yeah, you would have to come up with some more money. Sure.
We have at-risk money, and maybe at-risk money could help with that if they qualify for a certain program. Because in some cases, just some family members qualify, but some members don't, so you can pick up one but not the others.
Well, and the thing is, we do have situations hardship situations that we take care of kids. I mean, we live by our motto, every student, every day. So we have situations where we have addressed situations, and I'm not aware of anyone that is not having the opportunity to get to school.
Okay. If you go and see, if you travel those schools from 7:30 in the morning, it's crazy. And if we could alleviate some of that traffic by taking some of those cars off the road, that would be very, very helpful to everybody. So it's something to at least look at. And like Mike said, just let's look at the numbers and let's see what would happen. Because if we're going to be champion for kids, this would be one way to do it.
Or we could create a campaign and encourage people to carpool. I mean, there's a lot of factors here. I'm not quite sure if it's up to us to resolve that burden or not. But I mean, I guess I haven't heard any complaints, so I guess I wouldn't have heard if this was a concern.
I think you're on the money. We're glad you're looking at this issue.
Yeah.
We assume that if you feel there's a problem, you'll come to us.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to use my joke what Chris mentioned is, we'll just add that to the COVID money.
We can't now, 'cause we're almost out of it, yeah.
Thank you.
All right,
Yeah,
very good.
thank you.
Shoot, I had something to ask you, but it escaped my mind. So, okay, we'll move on to the next item. Thanks, Ron, for that information, it's great. KASB delegate for the KASB annual conference, or I should say, USD 49 delegate to the conference. Okay, folks, the KASB annual conference is being held from December 4th through December 6th, 2020. Now, this year, it's an online effort. They're having online sessions. But we do need to submit our delegate, and that all of us can attend if we want to. We have one delegate because somebody needs to vote for us, right? And so last year, I think Sophia was our delegate. We all know this. Tammy Welbrock is our representative to KASB.
What's the difference between the representative and the
Same
delegate?
thing. I don't know.
Okay.
The representative is the representative, but in
Yeah,
a
you don't
meeting
have to be
before we go
the
to
voting
the.
delegate.
Yeah.
You're just, I don't know.
I think it
really
just
know.
means you're not.
I'm
good
the arm
question.
candy.
You're only a delegate when you go.
We just wanted to give you a title, Tammy. Just wanted to give you a title.
Anyway,
Thank I like that.
if you are going to be able to attend, Tammy?
And it's all virtual, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
And thank you for Jess for getting me on there.
Okay, so
So I am going.
I don't think we need a vote on this. I just want to make sure that all the board agrees, if they do, that Tammy's our delegate.
Our voting delegate,
Any
right?
problem? Correct. She's our voting delegate. All of us, again, can attend as members.
So
In
there's
fact,
just a different
I'm
part
gonna be
I
there.
get
I'm going to
to
be
be.
there as a member, but I'm not going
Yeah,
to be able to
I'm
vote
gonna
because
be
you're our
there
delegate.
too.
I guess the only question would be, and again, if you guys so choose, what does the delegate, do they try to get more information to everybody prior to?
You will, and you'll
You'll
get
work with me.
information on the items that are being voted on prior to the meeting. And usually and I assume it's going to stay the same this year, but it's usually Sunday morning is when that delegate vote is held.
I think you'll get like a document of some type that
Yeah,
tells you
it'll
what the
have-
current resolution, or the current stat
Once you're
is,
determined, you'll probably get an email with
Yeah.
all that information.
and they'll explain why they think it's a good idea to approve this thing, and I think, I trust that you're a delegate, and you can make good decisions for us, but if you want some information from us, let us know.
Okay.
So unless there's any objections, we'll go ahead and submit your name, Tammy's name as a delegate. Is that okay with everybody? Okay? And we need an an alternate delegate, in case Tammy cannot be there. Is anybody else going to be able to attend the KASB?
I plan on attending.
Okay? Lori, are you going to be able to do it?
I'm going to attend also, but it doesn't matter to me if I'm a delegate or not.
Okay.
Or not, it's just
I'm okay with Alan being our alternate. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I'm going to be attending too, but I won't have to worry about anything now. Okay, so whatever we do, Jess, I guess you need to submit Tammy.
Has everyone registered? Alan, did you register on your own?
Yeah, I went in and I guess we get one free one or whatever, because I went in real early and I pushed through.
No, I haven't. Oh, okay, thank you.
The alternate is?
Alan?
Okay.
Very good. Okay.
Jess, could you check to make
Take
sure
care of
that I
that.
think I'm already registered?
And you'll take care of that delegate names and all that stuff, or somebody does? Okay.
Yeah, we got a couple months anyway, so we've got time, or a month and a half, whatever, to figure things out. So, thank you, everyone. Thanks, Jess. Okay, next is the future meeting agenda requests. Let me jump in with something. We need to do pictures again, but I think the next board meeting, Lance is not going to be able to make it. So what date is our one after that? A meeting after that. Let's see. I can look at my calendar, but I'm sure someone else has it.
November 10th, so 24th?
23rd.
23rd?
November 23rd is the next regular meeting.
November 23rd.
Okay. Do we think everyone's going to be able to make it to the November 23rd meeting?
And that's
Board
the week
members?
of Thanksgiving, if that makes a difference.
It is on
Yep,
Monday.
that's right.
Yeah.
November 9th is the work study session.
Okay, so the 11:23 works to take pictures?
I think so.
Before, I'll send an email. and-
With masks.
Yeah, we
Well,
want to make
then
it look
if we're with
authentic.
masks, I can pick them tonight.
Yeah, that's good. I was thinking the same thing. What are we going to do about that? Okay, so we are going to shoot for November 23rd to do pictures. Okay, any other future agenda requests, folks?
Ron, feedback on our special meeting the other night. I know my email has slowed down after the quarantine thing, so feedback, if,
Chris and I just were visiting that with about that before the meeting. The feedback I got was very positive from a lot of people. The collaboration that everyone had, it was all positive. So I think it was a great decision by the board, and appreciate you guys working with us on that.
So now I guess what Craig may be asking for, I don't know, is
No.
we need to monitor the situation, and if we are good to
I
go,
mean,
keep
yeah,
going. If we need to
we're
change it, we'll
we're
change it.
monitoring it
Yeah.
every day.
I'm
so,
sure you are, yes.
Yeah, if things would look, I think I looked today, we are right at 83 students in quarantine today.
Okay.
Of course, we have a big glut at the middle school and high school. Can't seem to quite move away from that, but once again, it's a shorter period, so they will come off sooner than later. So
Okay.
it's still a very positive thing.
I do have
Very
a
good.
question about a possible meeting, and is there any thought that we may be changing when we come back in January, or what our spring break plans will be, or is that just pretty much as the calendar is today?
Yeah, the calendar, I did meet with President Mason and local administrators. She had contacted us to talk about Fort Hayes's. They were possibly looking at maybe changing spring break. I think that I got an email from her just a couple days ago that said they would not be doing that. And so, when in my conversation with President Mason, because she was wanting our feedback in terms of what kind of ramifications that would, happen, if the Fort Hayes would decide to move spring break. And I just said, I didn't feel like it was probably something that we would want to do. I think our staff always looks forward to that week in March, and even though it's a long ways off, even if you take it away in November, it's going to be a shot, to the knees. So that was feedback I gave her, and then I think they've decided at the university to stick with. So no, there is no plans to
Okay.
be changing.
Okay.
Then that does not need to be on a future meeting.
No.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else, guys? And as always, if you would like to add something to an agenda down the road, please email me and Ron, and we can add it on there. It's not a big problem. Okay. All right, next is our executive session. We do need to hold an executive session tonight to discuss the superintendent's evaluation. And I have a draft report right here. So I move to enter into executive session pursuant to the Kansas Open Meeting Act for the purpose of discussing matters relating to non-elected personnel. The meeting will resume in this board meeting at 5:10.
Can we do a little
Yep.
extra for a potty break?
Yep, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So 8:50. And I'll explain why we won't need too much time.
I was going to say something about being late tonight. I didn't mean to be late. I have a job that causes me to have emergency sometimes, and so if that ever happens, I do have to adhere to the emergency. So that's what happens.
I'll make sure you have my, if you don't mind, I'll give you my cell number, and if you ever need to just text me, that's fine.
Okay. Sometimes in those
You don't have
emergencies, I can't do
Okay.
anything about it. I just have to go with it,
I don't
so.
think anybody assumed you were,
Understand.
Okay.
I don't think anybody assumed you were playing hooky, so.
We'll take your pay.
All right, folks.